Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And today my guest is, oh boy, that's good. Um, I really screwed this up. I'm going to start and stop. I'm going to start this over again because I screwed it up. So that's when you're going to start again. Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest is Daniel Goldstein, and he is with a company called Folience. And we are going to talk about something which I am really excited to talk about, which is using ESOPs in an unusual way. Now, ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. And here's the challenge with ESOPs. There's a ton of jargon that goes around it. We're going to do our best to explain the jargon as we go along. So for those who don't know, ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan, and we're going to bring Daniel on. And the first thing he can do is explain to us what an ESOP is. So let's bring him on. Hey, Daniel, how are you today?
I'm great. Good to be here. Thanks, Josh. So do you want me to tell you what an ESOP is?
Yeah, what is an ESOP?
Okay, in real simple terms, an ESOP is an employee-owned company, and employees don't pay for the stock. They get it by investing their labor to earn equity. So just by working for the company, they get to earn equity in the company. It's the great American dream of owning a stake in your company.
So why would they want to do that?
Because this is the way that they will be able to fund their retirement. The wonderful things about ESOPs is that they pay competitive wages and benefits, which addresses income inequality. And the ESOP is a qualified retirement plan that accumulates wealth to fund their retirement, which addresses wealth inequality. And the difference between the two, income inequality is getting through to the end of the month with your living expenses. Wealth inequality is funding your lifetime financial needs through retirement.
So, I've been a fan of ESOPs for a zillion years, and there are companies that are good for ESOPs and companies that are bad for ESOPs. What would the difference between the two be?
Well, I'm going to steal your thunder, Josh, because I know that you always say this, that an ESOP is not a solution for a failing company. So the absolute first rule is that to be successful as an ESOP, the company itself has to be successful. It has to be profitable. It has to be of a certain size. The rule of thumb, people say anywhere from a minimum of at least 25, if not 50 employees, and probably a couple $1 million in revenue, EBITDA. Smaller than that, there are some other forms like co-ops that might be available for employee ownership, but you need to be a successful company with a certain minimum size to really be feasible and sustainable as an ESOP.
So Folience is, I don't know if this is the right term, an ESOP holding company. Would that be the right term for that?
Yes, we call it an ESOP-owned diversified holding company.
So what exactly is that?
So our company started in 1884 around a newspaper that we started publishing the prior year in 1883, and we still publish it, the Cedar Rapids Gazette. 100 years later, we had both print and broadcast media, and the ESOP was started in 1986, a partial ESOP. In 2012, the television station was sold. In 2012, the company became 100% ESOP owned. And in 2015, the television station was sold. I started shortly thereafter in early 2016 with the idea that we had to diversify our revenue base, because at that point, we were again just a newspaper company. To be around for the next 130 years, we needed to diversify where our revenue came from. And so the diversified holding company is a platform where we acquire other companies, making them employee-owned, having them join our portfolio of companies. Our first acquisition was an ambulance manufacturing company. We then acquired later a very high-end horse and livestock trailer company. And so today we have over 500 employees. We do over $100 million in revenue. And we're 2/3 in manufacturing, 1/3 in media. So the diversification of revenue helps us weather volatility both in industrial sectors and geography, and that's you can't get much more diversified than newspaper and manufacturing.
It's pretty diversified. Kind of reminds me of Berkshire Hathaway.
Many people point to that, and I will humbly say that it is of the same kind, but we are infinitely smaller.
And you don't own insurance companies, which is what Warren Buffett's main driver is. But so I assume you guys are an S corporation, a subchapter S corporation.
Yes, we made the change in 2012 from a C Corp to an S Corp.
So could you explain why being a subchapter S corporation in an ESOP is so important?
I can, but I'm probably not the right person, Josh. So there are some very specific tax advantages and tax pass-throughs. And honestly, I would need to get my much smarter chief financial officer or some of my very smart partners to explain the intricacies of that, or turn it back to you, because I just know that.
So I'm going to take it back then for a second and just explain to everyone who's listening why we're talking about ESOPs, and specifically S corporation ESOPs, and why we need to have 50 employees at least in the ESOP to make sense. Subchapter S corporation is a pass-through, which means at the end of the year, the owner gets a K-1 for the profits of the company, and the owner pays taxes based on that K-1. Now, if I have an ESOP, which is a tax-free entity, while it's being run, own the company stock, the ESOP gets the K-1. Because the ESOP is a tax-free entity, you are actually running your company income tax free, both federal and state income tax free. Now, there's a whole bunch of rules that have to go there. And the interesting thing about Daniel's company is if you were to be acquired by his company, you wouldn't have to worry about all those rules because they're taking care of it. I will tell you, I've done a whole bunch of ESOPs. I've talked to people about ESOPs for 25 years. Almost every week, I have an ESOP conversation with somebody, and they're darn complicated. Now, I can get into the weeds and confuse the heck out of you about that, but it's not something that we need to do. But just realize that when you have an S corporation ESOP, it is tax-free, and that's one of the reasons we do there. Now, there's another thing about the S corporation ESOP, which is what I really wanted to talk to Daniel about today, because for years I've been saying, if you want to grow your business through acquisitions, an S corporation ESOP, there is not a better way to do it. So Daniel, why is that true?
So now I can answer that question. Thank you for the technical explanation. The sort of higher level explanation of what you said about why it's important to be tax-free is that it's a little bit, I use the analogy of a 401k. When you put your money into your 401k, you defer taxes until when you take money out as income at retirement. And that's why you have accelerated growth within your investment account, because you reinvest what would have leaked out as taxes. And ESOP is the same way when you have an S Corp. When you put your company into an ESOP S Corp structure, what you would have paid for taxes is reinvested into R&D, innovation, CapEx, etc. So you have accelerated growth over time. And it's not that you don't pay taxes. Those taxes are deferred until when the employee owners take the taxes, their withdrawals from the ESOP account at retirement. But that's part of the reason why there is a lot of evidence that documents the competitive advantage of ESOP structures over other structures because of that reinvestment over time. Now, there are significant other factors, such as the culture, the long-term horizon, the risk aversion, et cetera, that ESOPs have for why they're also at a competitive advantage. But that tax piece is very important, specifically for the S Corp.
So when you're buying companies, you're basically buying through stock sales using pre-tax dollars to do that. Let me just explain how powerful that is. If I pay you $1 million for your business and you're in the 40% tax bracket, the cost of buying that business really isn't $1 million. It's really $1.8 million because you have to earn $1.8 million, pay your taxes, which at 40% will be $800,000, to leave you with $1 million to pay for the business. But if an S corporation ESOP buys your business, they only have to pay you $1 million. They don't have the tax cost. So they have a huge advantage in the marketplace when it comes to buying your business, whether it's a stock sale or you're talking to somebody about an asset sale. Now, the thing that I've really liked for years, I said, you know something, if you really want to grow your business and you understand there is lots of ways to gain value out of your business, becoming a wholly grown ESOP and going down the acquisition strategy by matching culture and finance and operations is an incredibly strong and powerful way of going. I remember I wrote this article for the Times when I was blogging for them about an M&A story of a company who bought an electrical distribution company in Utah, large company. It was $1 billion ESOP. It was $2 billion buyers. The $1 billion ESOP bought it because they immediately made everybody 100% vested. They could afford to pay more money because they used after-tax dollars. And it was a better cultural fit for the selling owner than the publicly traded companies. So when you think about what an ESOP is, and Daniel, I want you to talk about this a little bit, which is the culture of an ESOP and why an ESOP culture generally is way more preferable than a private equity deal, for example.
Yeah. So statistically, a private equity deal means that the company is going to be up for sale within 3 to 5 years of the transaction. And of course, that means that management employees don't have much confidence in the long term. They're going to start looking elsewhere. Competitors are starting to take advantage of that turmoil and noise. ESOPs are long-term. They're patient capital. They're going to be looking at not only the culture, they're investing in the employees and the communities. They're looking at that long-term. So when we go in and we invest in a company, 2 of my best days in my career with Folience were when we acquired Lifeline emergency vehicles and Cimarron trailers. And I got up in front of their employees who had no idea why they were being gathered together for an all-employee meeting and told them, I have some news for you. Your company has been sold. Folience has bought it. There's a big gasp. And then I say, and now I'm going to explain to you how you're going to become the owners of the company. And that's very powerful. That's completely different than trying to spin a private equity group has bought you, and within 3 to 5 years, you're going to be sold again. And through our integration, through the transaction integration in both these acquisitions, not only was not one job lost, but we've had growth in both of those companies. And that's the real power of that long-term focus. The culture is very important. And this is where ESOPs tend towards greater transparency and greater inclusion of the decision makers at all levels. And that can run from the spectrum of just sharing some high-level financial data to some ESOPs implement what's called open book management. Along that spectrum, my style is something that I call distributed leadership. And what that means is that there's much greater transparency and it's pushing the work to the appropriate level. So for example, I never need to be and never should be the expert on HR issues in any of our companies. I've got really strong colleagues that are the experts in that field. I will always be informed at an executive level of what's going on throughout the organization, but I don't need to be a part of every decision. I'm not a part of the decisions for even some major things like when one of our companies went from a 5-day, 8-hour work week to 4 9s and a 4, which has been a great thing for attracting and retaining employees because they have essentially a 2.5-day weekend every week, and it's lowered overtime. But again, I didn't need to be a part of that. That was done by the appropriate people at the appropriate level. Then also, it's engaging employees at all levels. So while ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan, I really say it stands for Engaged Employee Stock Ownership Plan, because that engagement is key to unlocking the competitive advantage around the culture. And so for anyone who's watching a video, you're going to see that whenever I talk about ESOPs, I reach for my wallet and I pull out something which I'm holding up to the camera. It's our license to act. And every employee owner has this card. It's not about the card, it's about the message. It's the rights and responsibilities of ownership that every employee needs to participate in their ownership, because that's going to be the engagement that really unlocks the innovation, the productivity, That's the simple example of you can walk by the trash or you can pick it up. But much more importantly, it's the people that are doing the frontline work that really make the difference. And so one example is in our commercial printing plant, we've passed a 3-year mark of no lost time incidents. And recently I was talking with an employee from the plant, and she said, this isn't on you or management. It's on me and my coworkers. We're the ones that are being safe every day in how we work. And that's just the real power of employee ownership.
One of the things that I really like about employee ownership, and there are 2 types of ESOPs in the world. There are the type of ESOP you just described, and then there's the type of ESOPs where it's done purely as a financial transaction. And I've been involved in both. When an ESOP is purely a financial transaction, which is very, very, very powerful, they don't last as an ESOP very long, because the commitment for the selling owner and the commitment to the next generation of owners is not around transparency and ownership. It's about how can I get the most money out of this business. And if that's why you want to do an ESOP, don't do it.
Agreed.
It's not going to be a successful activity. There's a good chance it's going to crash and burn. There's a good chance the Department of Labor is going to put you right in their crosshairs. And you don't want any of those things to happen. But if you think that transparency, employee involvement, your employees are the experts at their job, and you want a great financial transaction, an ESOP just might be the right way to go. And the reason I like what you do is you've taken all the complexity out.
So there's something, I'll get to that in a second, Josh, but something that you said, which is really important, which is also a differentiation in ESOPs, is succession planning. Because it's always about the next generation. We care about long-term sustainability and profitability. And you have to have both profitability and culture to be sustainable. But what makes the difference is succession. And ESOPs invest in their employees. And so we have longer tenure. And we really make sure that there's going to be succession, which means that you're going to continue that success. People are going to be brought up to be the next generation of managers. In some of our companies, we have people that have over 40 years of tenure with that one company. And so that's just been a really phenomenal part of the success of ESOPs, and why, if you're not going to be involved in the culture, absolutely, you need to do something else. As far as what you're saying, so the Folience does take a different approach to ESOPs in the sense that we are an ESOP-owned diversified holding company. And what that means is that we're taking other companies, we're converting them from a different ownership to employee ownership, and we're adding them to our platform. But what's different about that is that if you sell your company to your employees and you do standalone ESOP, you have a great company, you have a next generation of management that can take over the company, and they're going to be very skilled at running the business. But now they also have to figure out, what does it mean to be an ESOP? And as you started out saying, ESOPs can be quite complex. So you have management which is skilled at running their business. They have to take their eyes off their business, which introduces operational risk, to then take on something which they've never done before, which is understand and run an ESOP, all the audit, compliance, administration, etc. Because they don't know that introduces compliance risk. And that's where a standalone ESOP might have some difficulty in transitioning through that ownership change. When a company comes and joins Folience, we want an underlying business that has a next generation of management that can successfully run that business, and that's what they're going to focus on. So when we brought Cimarron Trailers into our portfolio in 2018, Ben and Tony took over from Michael and Lynn, the owners, as president and director of operations, and they just had to focus on running the business, building and selling very high quality trailers. We took care of all the administration, the legal, the compliance. We brought them the culture, leadership development programs. We converted their payroll systems to automated payroll. We brought them all sorts of other programs. They didn't have to worry about that. When we came into this year with all the COVID and other things, they didn't have to worry about PPP funding. We took care of that through our shared services. They just focused on, first and foremost, keeping their employees safe and healthy, and secondly, navigating and surviving the global pandemic and the financial turmoil that came with it. And so that's where there's a difference between how Folience is bringing companies through that employee ownership transition.
And there's something else that Folience brings to the party, which I'm sure you're aware of, is that to do an ESOP right costs about $250,000 to form an ESOP from scratch. I'm going to bet that your cost of acquiring somebody and moving into your ESOP is less than $50,000. Now that you've done all the stuff, and the annual compliance, the extra for a new company, isn't all that much. But if you're a standalone, it's a good $30,000 to $50,000 to do it right, because you need an independent board, you need to pay for evaluations, you need all sorts of stuff that need to be done, which are part of the rules from the Department of Labor running the ESOP properly. Now, there are lots of promoters out there who are going to say, you can do it for $75,000 and you can be your own board of trustees and you don't need to tell your employees anything. I've listened to those guys talk and I say, okay, yeah, you can probably do that, but don't ever get audited.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So once you've gone through the due diligence, and whether you're doing an ESOP, not doing an ESOP, of course, there's a cost of due diligence. But once you've gone through that, there literally is no cost to us for bringing somebody on the platform. So, for example, when we acquired Lifeline Emergency Vehicles in 2017, 180 employees, we added 1 employee to our shared services. In 2018, when we acquired Cimarron Trailers, 125 employees, we added 1 person to shared services. There really is no cost to us. We already have the trustee. We already have the plan. We already have the audit partners, the legal documents. We can bring them through all the notifications. We don't need to pay for another trustee. There's an incremental cost to evaluation, but it's not a full cost of standalone. So the complexity and cost really is minimal to the almost to being non-existent.
So, Daniel, this is a really interesting conversation. I'm sure we could go on a lot longer. Here's the unfortunate thing. We're out of time.
Oh, already? Wow, that went fast.
Yeah. Well, 22, 23 minutes is not a long thing. I will say that if you go to nceo.org, is it .org?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, NCEOO, it's National Center for Employee Ownership. They have a ton, and I mean a ton, of information about ESOPs. And if you're interested in this concept, I highly recommend you go there. And if you're interested in learning what Daniel's doing at Folience, I'm going to bet he'd be willing to have a conversation with you. So how would they find you?
Absolutely. If you go to www.folience.com, and Folience is FOLIENCE, then also, and can I add, Josh, that I'm a very strong advocate at a national level for advancing employee ownership and increasing the opportunity for employee ownership. So let me give 3 other organizations that you can look up. The ESOP Association, and that's www.esopassociation.org. The Employee Ownership Foundation, that's www.employeeownershipfoundation.org. And the Employee Ownership Expansion Network, and that's www.eoxnetwork.org. And many states, Vermont is one of the best, have state centers that you can go to get more information, really good information. And so again, you can find all those state centers through that eoxnetwork.org. But there are some wonderful national organizations that will point you to the service providers that are really skilled in understanding ESOPs, because you really can get through this transition without inordinate costs or complexity. Now, of course, with Folience, you can do it with very little cost or complexity, but not every company is going to be a good match for us and vice versa.
That's true. And we didn't talk about which is another thing, and we're not going to have time to, I'm just going to mention it, is that if you have millennials working in your company, they will love an ESOP structure as they love benefit corporations. So if that's part of your strategy for going forward, you're going to need millennials and Generation Z to work for you. And ESOP's a pretty darn good thing to have. So I have 2 things I want to ask you to do. One is please, 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 after you listen to the show, go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review. If you hate it, let us know you hate it. If you love it, let us know you love it. But please do that. And the second thing is, an ESOP really, one of the good things about an ESOP is what I call financial freedom from your business. And I've had this project for business owners for years, which I call the Financial Freedom Project, which is one of the things you need to be doing in your business to help you become financially free, and how to get yourself unstuck from what I call perma-5, which is where everything always seems like it's 5 years away. And again, it's really easy. It's free. Just go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/freedom. That's www.sustainablebusiness.co, not .com, .co/freedom. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with Daniel Goldstein. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.
Thanks, Josh.